RAW versus JPEG editing. So we're going to edit this picture as well as talk about the benefits of a RAW versus a JPEG. So the RAW picture is 23 megabytes versus the JPEG, which is 3.4. So with this huge size increase, we're going to get a lot of benefits of RAW pictures. This is actually a DNG, which is a digital negative. It's by Adobe. It's more open process, but has most of the same benefits as RAW. So a JPEG has 256 shades in 8-bit versus a RAW, which will have 12 bits and will be 4096 shades. So many more shades of color, so many more editing options. Same things can go with brightness levels and a bunch of other editing things, more in the fine details. But the JPEG is also going to be processed versus the RAW picture, which won't be processed. So you'll be able to sharpen it and do noise reduction as you want and just get a better quality level edit doing that. So let's check out these two pictures. The raw picture is a little bit more bright, as you can see, as the JPEG. You actually even see some color, looks like color processing in there too, a little bit of a bluer sky. But let's lower this highlights just a little bit. We'll start with brightness. That'll be what we're mainly talking about in this editing comparison. And let's bring the shadows up quite a bit there as well. And then let's do the same with this raw DNG picture. Let's bring the highlights down even more. We get a lot more editing options, so we'll just totally change this even more with the sliders. And let's bring these shadows up a little bit. So there we're just now exposing a little bit more correctly. And what I'm going to focus on mainly and give a really bizarre example, an overkill example, is that little bright point in that sky right there in these clouds. It's just overblown and the whites are now unrecoverable like any color-wise, any editing. So let's turn the whites down all the way just for this over example. And let's even lower, let's lower the exposure. So now we can see that it's still super white and that it's super blown out in that little bit of cloud right there. And let's do the same thing with the raw picture and see the difference just for the super crazy example. Pull the whites down and then let's lower the exposure all the way. And let's zoom in. And you can see, I can just barely see two little dark spots in that very white piece of cloud. And let's check it on the other one. And maybe a small little hint in the middle there, but it's very much overblown with those little white pixels there. So that's just with the highlights. Let's check out the shadows really quick, a little bit faster of an example, but you were able to recover really crazy details. And now let's do it with shadows. Let's bump these up a little bit more. And let's now overexpose. And we're going to look at this little dark spot in these rocks. So there's a lot of black pixels in there. Let's bring the blacks up even more. And we can see a little bit of gray rock in this JPEG right here. And we're going to try the same thing with the raw picture and see just how much of a crazy difference we can see. Bring the blacks all the way up, expose it a little bit more. And you can see there's even less just straight black points. We're seeing a lot of different color RGB things, noise in there, but we're just looking at the blacks and we're seeing more rock detail and just rock color and compared to just straight black there in that little point. Let's check it again on the JPEG. That's just permanently black pixels. There's no changing that, as we can see with a crazy example from exposure and just increasing the black pixels. So it didn't quite work there. And we can quickly go into colors really fast. Let's reset most of these sliders. Let's leave the highlights and the shadows on both. Everything else is back to normal. And let's go into the color tab. So we first see the white balance temperature on the JPEG is just a general slider. And on the raw picture is you actually get a temperature number 4950K. So you're going to get a lot more control with the white balance, which is one of the really nice benefits of this, as well as just color editing. We're going to look at the color blue specifically. We're going to start with the JPEG. And let's check out the hue. So the sky and the reflection on the water, we're changing quite a bit here. And that is a chicken. And then here's the saturation, just over saturating, super blue. and then the luminance. And we're losing a lot of detail in the clouds there when we do luminance. And we're going to show specifically that versus the raw, because that's where I saw the most editing options. Oh, he's going crazy. And now we're lowering the luminance, and look at all the cloud detail still there. We had a super dark blue sky, all the whites were preserved in the raw picture, and it just wasn't possible with the JPEG. And that is a pretty clear difference of just editing options versus the raw picture. Let's check out saturation. The luminance was where I saw it the most, just playing around with editing. But we can check out the saturation, kind of compare a little bit. That's a pretty big difference. You get a lot more white in the clouds versus the JPEG, where it's turning the clouds a little bit blue there almost. So pretty huge difference editing with a raw picture and a JPEG. You can recover a lot more of the highlights and shadows, just the brightness levels, as well as color. You get a lot more options there. And we can go even more in depth with detail and sharpening and noise reduction, clarity and dehaze. You get just a lot more fine detail with a much larger raw picture versus a very small, already processed JPEG picture. So definitely, I'm going to continue shooting in a RAW and editing these DNG pictures and just getting a lot more cool shots and more editing options out there. So go out there, shoot some RAW pictures, and edit away. And we'll be signing out. Pew, 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 pew.